Welcome to the Football Pod. My name is Konstantin Eckner, and please welcome with me my co-host, Abel Mezaraj.
Hi guys, I hope you're enjoying the summer and maybe the European Championships, which is obviously the one story with some exciting games, some non-footballing stories that are taking place. And obviously this is transfer season as well. But what we wanted to do for this episode is to talk much more about the Euros. So that's why we have a guest whose team is not in the Euros, but nonetheless he's going to be very interesting, a Twitter personality and a journalist. And Konstantin, you can introduce him.
Yeah, we hope you enjoy our discussion with Norwegian journalist Jonas Giæver. So Jonas, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So how often can you rub it in that Norway are not part of the Euros?
Well, considering the fact it's been 21 years since we've played in a tournament, I suppose there's 21 years of rubbing it in. So yeah, I suppose that's the easy, more, I suppose, conclusive answer to your question. But then again, we've kind of gotten used to it. Honestly, we've gotten so used to it. We even had a discussion in this country about boycotting the next tournament because, that is obviously on another note, but a joke was that why would we boycott a tournament we're probably not going to qualify for anyways? So, we kind of gotten used to seeing every other Nordic country, now even Finland, qualifying for tournaments and us staying at home.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of also a surprise. I mean, if you look at the bigger picture, that Finland are now ahead of Norway, considering that Norway have like a golden generation, a so-called golden generation. I mean, that's debatable, but yeah, first that's, and also you got destroyed by Turkey.
We did, which, and I mean, Holland got destroyed by Turkey as well. So I don't know. It's one of the weirdest things of this tournament, Turkey, because I was, and I'll be honest, I'll put my name out there. I was one of those that had Turkey as a dark horse. Everyone else did, but I had watched them a lot, and I was like, there is something really interesting about this side. They can do some big things in this tournament, and then they just fell apart. But yeah, I suppose if you wanna spin the narrative in that aspect, yes, we as Norwegians, our national team, we got destroyed by Turkey. That is correct.
It's interesting because I was also, because we're doing a lot of the European qualifiers for the network that I work for, and I actually paid attention to Turkey, Norway, Netherlands group, and I was like the same thing that you said, and we didn't talk about this before, but Turkey really, really impressive, especially in the Norway game, and in terms of like some of the things they did with the build-up, or even just like how they defended, and we didn't see any of that. Like that was one of them, and they just played like, you know, the Turkey sides of, like, let's say the mid 2000s, when it was just no tactics, just kind of these, like, there's like a 60-meter long team with gaps all over. They defended, like, you know, couldn't really pressure. Like all their big name players, like, I mean, the Italy game was a good example of it, where I thought they defended in the first half pretty well, but as soon as they moved Çalhanoğlu from the outside to the inside and brought in Cengiz Ünder, they tried to counterattack, and they just crushed, and then it just became worse somehow. And yeah, I don't know. Do you feel like they're the most disappointing team, or do you have somebody else maybe?
No, they're probably the most disappointing team by far. I mean, because everyone had them as a potential winner of the tournament. I mean, and it was the biggest disappointment. And I suppose if you look at a team, they are the biggest disappointment. There are individual players that have disappointed me, but I think if you're just looking at a team, then I suppose they'd be pretty clear favorites. I'm trying to think now if there's anyone else I'm forgetting here, but I mean, Poland, but then again, did we expect that much from Poland? I mean, they are Robert Lewandowski plus 10. They really, and really they are plus 10 because both of the players that would have, I suppose, been substituted in for or next to Lewandowski were injured in Piontek and Milik, who were both out before the tournament even started. So it was just so much for Lewandowski to do, and he was pretty close there to actually being able to overcome it as well. So Yeah, I'd say Turkey is a clear number one, and if I have to pick another one, I'd say Poland, I guess.
So we have this all out of order now, because I mean, actually we wanted to start, go right in, but now we are in the middle of the tournament already. Of course, Jonas, we invited you to discuss the Euros, and actually my first question was, I wanted to ask you about like what's your experience up to this point, and maybe we should just scrap that and go right ahead. And you mentioned Turkey. I mean, one of the disappointing teams. Also Poland. Yeah, I mean, hard to assess actually teams that have like one superstar and then a couple of role players who might be talented but also might not be up to par when it gets against the biggest nations in Europe. But speaking of big nations, like I want to throw something at you and get your opinion on it. The big nations, the favorites and so on, they have not lost a match against an underdog team in the group stage. So I mean, that's like kind of, is it over like, with the old saying that like there are no small nations? I guess there are a lot of small nations because they all get beaten by France or not by France, but by Portugal or by Spain and so on. So I guess there's something to about it.
Yeah, seemingly. I've noticed that one as well. I mean, we've had a few ones that were somewhat close, but not really. I mean, we recently had Hungary and Germany, obviously, where Hungary were rather close to an upset there, which is probably the closest one we'll get, or I suppose the closest one we have gotten to an actual real upset. But yeah, you make a good point there. I think it's. I don't know if that is sort of detrimental to how the tournament is now set up with 24 teams, that you will obviously eventually you're set there with 16 teams where the 16 best teams remain. So I think that might be why we haven't seen the big upsets. But I think I have a feeling that we'll get one big upset in the round of 16 because there are a few teams in the round of 16 that perhaps are viewed as smaller or not as good as some of the teams that are left. And there's at least one upset that I can actually see coming.
I mean, and small is of course not the right term. Belgium is a small nation, but one of the
in football sense, yes,
yeah, in the football sense, of course they are not, and like Netherlands the same, and you can argue about Portugal. So I mean, like what's small?
They're
what's
reigning
big,
European champions. They're reigning European champions. I mean, they can't be small.
Of course not. No. I mean, no, of course. I mean, we can talk about Greece. They also won the championship in 2004. I still think they are a smaller football nation. They are not even part of this tournament.
The exception that proves the rule. The exception that proves the rule.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah. Okay. What about Denmark in '92?
Yeah.
But Denmark, I view Denmark as one of the dark horses of the tournament. And
in '92.
In '92, they shouldn't even have been there. I mean, they weren't even qualified. Yugoslavia was qualified, and they got in. No, but in this tournament, I said that because obviously being Norwegian, we follow Scandinavian football and especially national team football very closely. And I said from the start of it, I said I had two dark horses in this tournament, and that's Turkey and Denmark. Denmark because they had so many of their matches played in Parken in Copenhagen, which means that I assume that they would get an easier way out of their group because they're extremely strong at home, and they've always been extremely strong at home. And then obviously, and here, if you want to talk about upset, and this is an upset with a caveat, an asterisk, and everything else next to it, the Finland game is the big upset so far in this tournament. But obviously, that had ramifications based upon what happened. But no, I think Denmark, if Denmark is to win the tournament, it's an upset because they're not I suppose a tournament favorite in that aspect. But as a footballing nation, in Scandinavia, we view Denmark as number one, and then Sweden as close number two. We obviously, as Norwegians, view ourselves as number three, but we're not even playing tournaments anymore. So I'm not sure if we should even do that anymore.
No, you're number 5, as far as I know. You're right below Iceland and Finland.
We're conference league, I suppose.
You're kind of conference league, but you have to be careful. It might go downhill from here. You never know. And then you're battling relegation, and all of a sudden you're out of Scandinavia.
All of a sudden, we got Faroe Islands ahead of us as well. I suppose that's the next when they qualify for the Qatar 2022 tournament. We're sat here,
Yeah, the Denmark thing was interesting because I like when Kasper Hjulmand took over. I was also like one of the like same thing with you said about Turkey is it was another team that I watched and I really enjoyed them. And then like I thought that they're really the only team their thing like their tactics don't work so much against. It happens to be Belgium, and they seem to just lose against them every time in very similar ways, which is like usually just defensive transition, which is kind of their weakness, or just individual quality against Lukaku, which let's face it, like most people are gonna lose there. So no real shame in that. But the attacking stuff was always there, and I think in that sense, like a lot of people got to know like some of the more like some of the things that are more surprising, right? Like with Højbjerg being so creative, plays different, or you tweeted about Joachim Mæhle a lot as Maldini, I guess is what you should call him. So, but that's a fun one. Are they the most fun team for you, or who's the most fun team, or who's the thing that you like to watch the most?
I mean, in terms of narratives and stories and everything, of course, Denmark has been number one and the most, I suppose, most tragic and most fun team to watch, because I mean, we've all sort of gotten behind Denmark now, and we as Norwegians, we were under Denmark at a point. I mean, they were our rulers until 1814. So obviously there's a lot of people saying that, well, we are kind of Danish anyways, aren't we? So it's been sort of a camaraderie, a brotherhood of Scandinavia around Denmark now, with the exception of Sweden, because obviously they're still in the tournament. But yeah, they've probably been the most fun team to watch in that aspect. The most fun team to watch, where I'm sat and I'm just viewing a footballing masterclass and I have fun to watch, is obviously Italy, because everyone has loved Italy. And I don't know about you guys, maybe you noticed this, but every time Italy does well, everyone sort of notices the small details around the Italy team. Like, oh, look at how handsome Mancini is. Have you seen a photo of him without his shirt on? He looks absolutely astonishing for his age.
Doing
have you
back
seen
heels at 57?
Have you seen the Armani suits that the Italian players wear? Oh my God, they're so elegant. Oh, have you noticed the way they sing the national anthem? It's like, this is something that happens every single tournament. You just notice it now because Italy are playing well. It annoys me. That thing annoys me.
That's a great point, because I feel like the Euros, more so than anything, this is the epitome of people talking in cliches, right? And we always notice the things like, oh, the Germans are organized, or they with and it just becomes the worst is the steamrolling, and like all the or the like it's like, yeah, as you point out, like whether or not that has any effect on the outcome is doubtful at best, but it's very convenient to fall into those narratives, even if Italy, I think, have been kind of the standout teams. I don't know, Konstantin, has there been other ones for you? Because we're mentioning top teams. I mean, we saw Belgium with 9 points, right, or Netherlands, or really the first four groups, right? So all of them has a team except for England that finished with 9. But are there any other ones, Konstantin, that kind of caught your eye?
But no, that's the interesting thing about the Euro. I mean, you can look at maybe the Netherlands as one of the teams that has more or less played convincing football. But, also Belgium, but you see some of the weaknesses, same with France and Portugal and Germany. And England, I mean, they haven't conceded a goal. That's something. That's an achievement, of course. But on the other hand, it's kind of dragging when they play down the field, and it looks like Southgate hasn't figured out what to do in terms of possession football, and in terms of like how actually to get into the final third and into the box effectively, and not just use Grealish and Foden and Mount and their talent. So I think like when you look at the map basically and look at the 16 teams that are remaining in the tournament, that's why Italy stands out. Because you have Italy who put it all together. They play exciting football. They play successful football. Yes, there is some kind of aura to the team, and yes, Mancini. But also I find it interesting that now Mancini is kind of the cool dad, when a couple of years ago he wasn't. No one really considered Mancini to be a great coach or something. Or some people did maybe, but he wasn't really in the limelight at the time. But they put it all together. Then there are some teams like Spain, England, who are good in some phases of the game, but not good in all of them. Same with Germany, in my opinion. Same with Portugal. And France also, I mean, you would say that France are the favorites still, but no, well, that past two games haven't been that great to France, actually. So it's interesting. That's why I think Italy stands out, because they are the only team that has put all these things together.
Yeah, I agree. I really do agree, and I think it's an interesting one. Now, when you look at the tournament tree and how you see the two brackets line up against each other, because the first bracket where Italy are, I mean, eventually you're probably going to lose out a lot of favorites really early on in this tournament, seemingly. I was looking at it, and I believe it's Netherlands, Wales, Denmark, and I can't remember the last one, Czech Republic, I think. One of those teams will be in the semifinal. And I think that's extremely odd. Because none of those four teams to me are, I mean, tournament favorites. They weren't so going in. I mean, Netherlands, yeah, but then again, teams they face, I mean, they face the Ukraine that doesn't have a defense. They face North Macedonia, who is the worst team in the tournament. And then, yeah, against Austria, I'll say against Austria, they were good.
I mean, that Austria team is also the one that's like, you know, one of those where, like, probably the best example of the names that you have, they have like the most amount of names that don't amount to a coherent team, I guess, to put it in the simplest terms.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah,
I like, to me, that was an interesting thing or question, and I want to ask this to you guys, because I feel like maybe it's down to what you said earlier, that okay, it's 2014 and 16 qualifies, so like unless you do something extremely dumb, you're gonna get through, and maybe managers are not like going all out. And I certainly saw this with players. Like I went to the France-Hungary game, and it was very hot, and like, and this isn't meant to take anything away from Hungary or anything, but I felt like a lot of the French, like the first time I pressed intensely was like the 87th minute high, first time. And that would never happen in a league match, or even, maybe even in a friendly or whatever. And that's something that I feel like isn't talked about as much. I know some people like did some stats that there are much more possessions now as opposed to the previous Euros, and the pace of the game is much slower, and I feel like teams are resting maybe with the ball. So one question I have is, do you feel like the managers are adjusting to this, or do you feel like there's been good managerial performances, or are teams like holding back, or what do you make of all of this?
It's a good question. I think being able to, I suppose, transform in relation to the game situation in terms of how the game develops is something that kind of separates the good managers from the best managers.
So are there a lot of those that are doing it? Because I feel like like what even with France, like this is what I felt like. It just doesn't seem like I couldn't recognize any patterns that were there in the game. Like in the Portugal game, there were much more of those. Whereas like putting in Mbappe, cutting in, and Pogba trying to hit him deep, but I felt like it's coming slowly, and like it just feel like maybe they have initial plans, but I don't feel like there's a lot of adjustments in general, and that's why maybe.
Yeah, not to sound too controversial here, but if you look at tournaments, every single tournament that's played, there's an argument there to be made that a tournament is won by the team that has either a moment of brilliance or the best individual players. There's very seldom that you see a really good team win a tournament. It doesn't happen very often.
That's a nice point.
I think that Germany had a very good team in 2014. I think that was a team performance that won them the World Cup. But other than that, I mean, if you look at Portugal in 2016, was that a good team, or was that a moment of magic from Ede? And they were obviously they had a defensive organization. I will give them that. They had a defensive organization that was interesting, but they all relied on individual brilliance all the time. And I think the same thing went for France as well in 2018. They had moments of brilliance, but as a team, were they really that good?
That's why they're disappointing to me. Like I feel like both of those teams, like, because arguably they're more talented now, I think, both of those, than the 2016 or the 2018 champion winning side. But like with Portugal, to me, it's like they just basically, they can't play Bruno Fernandes anymore. They really they're supposed to be a defensive team, and they're so narrow with the back four that you can spread them apart. I Guerrero, as much as I love him, and I know Constantine is a big fan, he just doesn't seem to know what's going on. They really don't know, there's not really pressing that's coherent. And it's basically Renato Sanchez who can maybe let's give him the ball and he can beat somebody one-on-one, or maybe switch the ball. And I felt like that's the team that had a very clear way of how to beat France or Germany in my mind, and they just didn't really use any of that. And I just they also started slow, of course, in 2016, because it was the same thing. They were in the group with Hungary, and so maybe they'll pick it up. But I'm more disappointed that Andre Silva can barely get on, or João Felix we haven't even really seen, and there's all this talent, and I don't feel like they're utilizing it. But Constantine, what do you make of all of this? Do you agree with some of these accusations, or do you want to defend some of these managers for us?
Accusations? We accused them of playing boring on purpose.
No, but just not trying maybe as much, or not adjusting as much.
Yeah, but also as Jonas said, that's that has been the pattern when you watch the most successful teams in the recent tournaments, be it 2016, 2018, 2014, the same with Germany. They adjusted their style a little bit more to the opponents, but also they played a quite reactive style with three center backs, basically, playing a back four, but essentially having three center backs with Hövedes on the left side, who never crossed the halfway line. So that's not really a left back. It's just a third center back, and also style that was more reactive, or at least waiting for errors or mistakes committed by the opponents. So I think that's really what we see right now, and that's why Italy stands out, and maybe Spain stands out with the really possession-heavy style. Is that plenty of these teams, they have the talent, but they are trying to rely more on counter-attacking, more on being reactive, more on rating or forcing opponents into mistakes. And it's not even important what the system is they play or what the formation is. It doesn't really matter. It really is more about the attitude and the style they play. And I think Deschamps and Fernando Santos and Joachim Löw and even Gareth Southgate, as 3 or 4 head coaches of 4 of the biggest nations at this tournament, they represent kind of what national teams are these days. And I mean, you can of course discuss how maybe not the best coaches are coaching national teams, because I mean the lucrative jobs are at the clubs, of course. I mean, if you have the chance to manage Real Madrid, why would you go to a national team unless maybe you are old and want to have an easier lifestyle? So I think
Ask Julian Lopetegui about that one.
Well, I mean, he's an odd fella. Let's put it that way. He's the odd man out in a lot of ways. We want to look at his person and his. I mean, of course, Luis Enrique is also he's not old or something. But I mean, what's the option? What are his options outside of the Spanish national team? I don't know if there are any options at high-level teams. Is he really getting a job at Paris or something? I'm hesitant about it. But I mean, Jonas, when we talk about coaches, is there any coach right now, in your opinion, at the tournament, and not Mancini? I know his Armani suits are, they are fitted well, and yes, custom-made style. I like it. But maybe outside of Mancini, is there any other coach that has impressed you in a way? Because I think sometimes we overlook the coaches of the smaller nations. Because in the end they often lose and then they are out, but we overlook them a little bit because it's more their time to shine in a way, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'll bring up 2 that have impressed me, and that's Rossi, a manager of Hungary. I think he has been absolutely fantastic. I think that he is, and not just in that he has managed to create a cohesive unit, but he has also managed to find a way to live without having Szoboszlai in this tournament. Because when I watched Hungary in the Nations League, I always thought that, well, this is a team. Yeah, they are 10, I suppose 9 workers or guys that work and do a lot of heavy lifting, and then you have one creative superstar who they ask to do the little bit special when they need it. They managed to find a way around that, and I think that's so interesting in that they've also understood their limitations, but they managed to expand those limitations within their side. If we're going to talk about a team that has impressed me, I think Hungary really has impressed me a lot. And they were very close to qualifying from that group. And I mean, I know every single pundit, expert, sofa expert, whatever you want to call them, everyone had Hungary 0 points, 1-8 in goal difference, smashed by everyone, but they were close to eliminating one of the bigger sides there. And they had some amazing results. I mean, 0-0 against France, 2-2 against Germany. They have all the reason to be proud. And I think that they did it by being so cohesive and so compact in everything they did. They attack together, they defend together, they understand the moments and the momentum of the game when they need to fall back and when they can push a little higher. That's why I think they waited so long to push high, for example, against Germany, because the momentum was more shifted that way for them. And they're able to identify the moments in the game where they actually are able to do things like that. And I find that fascinating. And I think that's something that they must have had instilled from a good coach who sees the patterns in the game.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I have a little bit of insight into the Hungary team because I've talked to a lot of the staff. And yeah, and like what you said, a lot of those things are very predetermined in terms of how do they do the rotations in transition, or which spaces to attack, or like, let's say, how does a side center back, when does he make the run? And they're very, they're very common patterns that they work on. Obviously, you can see the defensive shape, which is, or how do they target? Like, for example, how do they target Ginter against Germany? He becomes the free man in possession, and they let him do it. And because they know that Ginter is not particularly as sort of a side center back who kind of shows up in the fullback attacking positions. He's the better option than Hummels or even like Rudiger, or obviously Kimmich or Kroos on the ball. So you just let him have it and see what he can do. And it turns out it's mostly going to be crosses or these diagonal balls you can intercept or you can clear. And so those are things that I mean, like for example, Turkey, just to bring up a different example, like they weren't doing those kind of things. And you saw that, like in the Nations League, I think Senor Güneş was like, well, we didn't really prepare anything for Hungary. And it seemed like they didn't really prepare too much for the Euros either. And like, okay, maybe I'm not, obviously I'm trying to, like overdoing the point, but there are teams and again, like this is the edge you have to take sometimes, that you have an analyst or a team of analysts, or your coach has a better model that works in a tournament setup, and they don't have to change anything. Like I think one of the big things that we talked about is teams that don't adjust. There's a bad side to it, but also if you play a system really well, like let's say Hungary, play that 3-5-2, 5-3-2 really well, then there's no real reason for you to adjust, because it just works. And it's not like you're going to have to dominate against France, right? Like the game plan is set. So who's the second team that impressed you?
Yeah, the other one that I would like to point out is also, and again, because I interviewed both him and a couple of his players ahead of the tournament, Hjulmand and Denmark. I think Denmark had they gone out, which was a real concern ahead of the last game, they'd been the best team to be eliminated, because Denmark, the first 45 minutes, I suppose we can call it, in that Finland game, they were, I mean, it was one team on the pitch. I mean, they completely dominated against Finland until the Eriksen situation happened. And I thought that they were absolutely fantastic in the first half against Belgium as well. And then Belgium becomes Belgium. And then obviously in that 4-1 victory over Russia, they show that their attacking prowess, the way that they attack and interchange in attacking positions, the way they brought in Mikkel Damsgaard to sort of be more of a runner into the box and also come into light in terms of being creative. I think that Hjulmand has been fantastic in understanding the depth of the squad, because Denmark has a lot of talent, and they have a lot of talent that brings different things to the team. Obviously, this was a team that offensively was built around Christian Eriksen, and Eriksen was supposed to sort of be the live wire in this side, but they've been able to sort of find a different way of attacking without him in the side, which I think is great credit to Kasper Hjulmand, who has been, I mean, he's done fantastic with the side, but he's come into this tournament with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, with a small chip on his shoulder, because he wasn't supposed to be the coach for this tournament. And everyone sort of knows that, and he's admitted to it himself. It was supposed to be Åge Hareide, the Norwegian manager, was supposed to have his sort of farewell, but then considering the tournament was delayed, his contract expired, and Denmark had already signed Hjulmand up as the replacement, so Hjulmand had to take the tournament. So everyone is sort of, yeah, you're here and you're doing well, but it's sort of weird, kind of odd that it's you and not him. But he's been able to sort of keep everything in check, and then obviously been handed the absolute most horrific situation that I believe has ever occurred in Scandinavian football, at least on the pitch, with the Eriksen situation in a tournament at home in front of all, the maximum capacity at Parken, and then being able to control that and still spur the team on both tactically and also another thing that's very impressive, which I think needs to be talked about more. He was able as well, when they faced Belgium, they didn't over-attack. They didn't expose themselves. They didn't. Let's go back to Germany 2014 against Brazil, when they lost Neymar and they had the shirt up and everyone was like, "Oh, we're doing this for Neymar," and they got smashed by Germany because it went to their heads. In Denmark, they've been able to cool themselves down and understand that, yes, we still have a plan to do here. We still need to. Yes, we're going to play for Christian Eriksen, but we're going to do it in the right way. And again, that has to show the momentum of a great leader, I think, of someone who is able to keep everyone calm and to still keep everyone moving the same direction, even though they've obviously had an incredible dent in I suppose their record and in some aspects, considering that they lost their best player.
Yes. So another, and I mean, of course, I mean, I can totally agree with that the Eriksen situation was unique, I mean, to say the least. Was also something that there's like no rule book, there's nothing you can just follow guidelines or something, because I mean, no one is planning that someone is collapsing on the pitch and then is on the verge of dying, basically. I mean, that's like kind of how the situation was, and
he was dead.
Players are watching, or our teammates are watching him, and like the fans
were watching it. We were watching on TV.
Well, that's something I would like to forget, by the way, that we as television viewers were watching it, or I mean, at least there was the option to watch it. I mean, I hope that a lot of viewers and now our listeners just I don't know, switch channels for a while or something, just went out for a walk. Might be the best decision there, because it wasn't something suitable for anyone. I mean, be it an adult, be it a child. But yeah, of course, I mean, there's nothing you can really follow there. There's nothing you can do. And I mean, even if you are an experienced coach, I don't think you can handle well. And even like the players, I mean, some might handle it better than others, of course. That's like really depends on the personalities and just how you are wired. But in the end, I mean, I don't think there isn't one player that's not affected, at least to some extent, especially when it's your teammate. I mean, and even like what was overlooked a little bit was that the Finnish player, that they are also, it wasn't like that they are not cold-hearted and standing there, well, we don't care. I mean, it was kind of the same. It wasn't their teammate, but still, it was someone they know and they have just played against for 40 minutes. Yeah, it's not like that goes by and you don't care about it. So but it was very early on in the tournament, and it's I think what I think was commendable was that how fans, the players, how they reacted to it online, for instance, and how it was addressed in the aftermath. At least it wasn't addressed in the aftermath in the right way, in the appropriate way. And I think media people, just like fans online, spoke about it in the right way. And also we hopefully at some point, I don't know, I mean, I'm kind of optimistic here, maybe there will be some conclusions to be drawn. I think it's hard to do that midway through a tournament. But we have to talk about it at a later point about, just, I mean, we don't know the reasons, but there is something to be discussed about just exhaustion and medical screening, and like how many matches are these players actually playing, and how are they actually monitored, and how closely are they monitored. And I don't want to accuse the doctors, because I don't think they did anything wrong, the club doctors and so on, but there is something to be said about how closely are the players monitored, and what's really going on in terms of like health treatments, and maybe even, you know, someone not going to a tournament, someone not playing a match because there might be something, or someone is not feeling well. Because, you know, it doesn't even have to be connected to the Eriksen situation, but I think it was eye-opening to a lot of people again after so many serious situations and fatal situations since 2000. I mean, I looked it up after the Eriksen incident, how many players there were who either died or were on the verge of dying during a match. I mean, you know, dating back to Fer and Antonio Puerta and so on and so on. I mean, there are number of players. That's all. These are only the well-known players, by the way. They are also, you know, in lower level leagues. I mean, we don't even know about the number there. Because it's not reported that widely, but it goes into the three or four digits, even if you look at the past 30 years or so. Anyway, maybe coming back to a more, you know, lighthearted way to talk about the tournament. I mean, Abel, I know you have watched all the matches at least twice. We locked you down in your basement and gave you the footage. I mean, there's a couple of, like, let's say, tactical elements that we might discuss. I mean, one thing I noticed is like that the wingbacks play a prominent role at this tournament, or wingbacks, fullbacks, attacking fullbacks, like Robin Gosens for Germany, Spinazzola for Italy, Attila Fiola for Hungary, and so on and so on. I mean, there are a couple of wingbacks in different roles, but they are playing a prominent role. So they, you know, they are not in the corner anymore. They are, you know, they are respected now, the wingbacks.
Or Joachim Mele to mention Jonas. Yeah. It was like, I mean, as much as I think like tactics, in terms of the changes and in the finer things that you see in the league or Champions League match, don't play such a big role. I do think like it's more the base tactics and the base formations that, let's say, it works against one team and might not work on another team, like we saw with Germany against Portugal and some of the other ones. But yeah, with the wingbacks, I feel like there's such a shortage of fullbacks in general, and a lot of teams, like even France, you know, they play basically kind of center backs as fullbacks. Now they play Kunde right back, and or even what happens with Germany now with Kimmich, or where he plays. And those are the ones. So it seems like most of these teams are going to this wing back formation. I think the Athletic did a piece of the most common formations, and they actually did the 4-3-3 as the most common one, which doesn't have wing back, but if you add up all the 3-4-1-2, 3-4-2-1, 3-5-2, that's actually more. So I always kind of like, there's two things that I noticed, which is just you can obviously stretch a lot of the teams that play with the back four with high wing backs, and particularly if they have attacking qualities. That's one way to do it, and that was very successful, obviously, for Germany. I think for some of the other teams as well. Or the other thing that I actually wasn't me that noticed is Jerome Polens, who is an analyst in Germany and a former player. He tweeted about the kind of inverted wingbacks, which Spain will sometimes use, or sometimes even fullbacks as well. That you get in crosses that way. So if you put like a right-footed guy on the left side, and you can cut inside and cross from better positions. I kind of, you know, kind of saw that other teams use that. So is that something that's just for the Euros, or what did you guys think about it? Because one of the questions that we got is that what do we make of them? What are the biggest weaknesses of the top teams? Like, do you feel like defending this is a weakness, or what did you guys make of this wingback situation? That's what I wanted to ask.
I think that in terms of using it for a tournament, I think that the wingback situation, or at least playing as a style that's viewed still as a little bit more elaborate than what is normal. I mean, 4-3-3, 4-4-2 has sort of been the normal styles, the normal formations to play in terms of depending on how dynamic you want to be and how direct you want to be. The 3-5-2 or the 3-4-3, even the 5-3-2, obviously gives you an outlet, which is a lot more difficult. The same way you can also congest the mid. So it depends on how effective your wing backs are and how dynamic they can be. I think that for a national team, it gives them I suppose a decisiveness, a sort of an X factor that's not so normal in national team football, or hasn't been as normal, which is why I think it's interesting to see that so many teams are applying it now in a tournament. I think that if you're going to try and base it off of to European club football, that's very based upon which country you are in, and sort of what the traditions of the styles are in the different countries that you go to. I mean, in Italy, you've seen Atalanta have used a style of it for a couple of years now with great success. Antonio Conte won several Scudettos with, or Scudetti as it would be, because it's more than one in Italian, with both Juventus and Inter. If you look at Spain, the 3-5-2 is basically not there. I mean, it has been there for a little while with Ronald Koeman trying to use it now. And you also had Pablo Machin, who used it at Girona. But remember, that was a nuisance. I mean, when Girona had the 3-5-2 in La Liga, it was sort of like, oh, what is this exotic thing? We haven't seen this in Spain before. See, so it all depends on where you go, which is why I think it's incredibly interesting that you see so many teams applying it for an international tournament where you also have less time to prepare. But though, if you're able to use it, it gives you an X factor against teams that are not able to defend it. So I think it's in Norwegian we'd say it's skit eller dynamitt, which means it's either extremely good or extremely bad. So, and we've seen in this tournament, for the most part, it's been extremely good. And I'm very surprised that it has been as good, because I cannot remember a team that plays 3-5-2 or 3-4-3 that has embarrassed themselves. I can't. I might be able to, if someone wants to correct me, then feel free. But I cannot think of a team that's played a formation which has been like, that's horrible.
There were times when it didn't work. Like I felt like sometimes with Austria, with the way they were using Alaba and Hinteregger, but yeah, I wouldn't go as far as saying it was.
But that's more based on selection. That's more based on their selection, not the formation itself. That's more based on Foda not being able to pick the right player for the right position.
Or I guess kind of like Switzerland for me were a little bit disappointing, and especially in the first couple of matches, and because they did, like, it's like the perfect team that has, like, Mbabu is to me like as good of a wing back as you can have, but it wasn't. I don't think he's kind of played himself out, and Zuber's playing. So yeah, but I agree with you in general. Like, the question that we got was, and I'll give you my answer is that, what do you think is the biggest weaknesses of these top teams or favorites, or let's say like the teams that are still in it? Like, is there one thing that you've noticed or you guys noticed?
I think that they're more susceptible to be caught on the counter, because I think it gives you're trying to create a superiority in the offensive half, but if there's a break in the middle, you're extremely vulnerable for someone to counter you on the wings, for example. So I think that France are going to love playing against teams that are 3-5-2. I think they're going to absolutely think it's great to be able to break in the middle and then spring Mbappe, Benzema, and Griezmann. I mean, and they have the players in midfield, obviously, to break up play. So if you're not very, very careful against a team like France, you can get absolutely hammered by them, because I think that they see that as the formation that probably is the one that they would like to face.
The attacking 3-5-2, right? Because when they played Hungary, it was the 5-3-2, and like they did have good chances mostly in the first half, but it was a very closed match, so they couldn't.
But Hungary wasn't supposed to attack in that match. I mean, Hungary understood.
That's why I meant by being a.
But that's what I'm saying about limited. If they face Belgium, for example,
if they have to face,
I think France could absolutely smash Belgium if Belgium play the way that they, because you've also seen with Belgium and especially in a game against Denmark, they kind of understand themselves that our defense is not the best, so we kind of have to attack to make sure no one sees how bad we are defensively. So, and that is one of the positives, but also one of the weaknesses of the 5-3-2 or 4-3 or 3-5-2 or whatever, because I think it masks that you have perhaps limitations in defense. But if that bottle is unscrewed, you're gone. I think.
What do you think, Konstantin? Was there something that you noticed in terms of the sort of tactical deficiencies, or where you could attack them?
I mean, no, I come, yes, of course, but I can also come back to the point we discussed earlier that I think a couple of coaches, I think that was very prevalent with Portugal, to a lesser extent with Croatia, by the way, and also England, that some of the coaches, England maybe to a lesser extent, but that some of the coaches are not really capable of adjusting their overall system. I mean, you don't have to change your formation, you don't have to change everything, but adjusting their system to the opponents, especially when you see that like in the first 20 minutes or so that it's not working. Especially, I mean, if you're too compact in the middle and you can't really defend against the wing backs, then of course you have to change something. Otherwise, you will be beaten at some point.
Unless you're Fernando Santos.
Sorry?
Unless you're Fernando Santos. It's like, I'm just fine.
But that's the thing. Some coaches don't react or they react too late. And especially I wonder sometimes because I mean with the national teams and with, let's say, Portugal is in my opinion a good example, because when you look at the squad, you got a couple of players who can fill in different roles. It's not just one system and like all players have to fit in one system. You see that, but they don't really some of the coaches don't really capitalize on kind of the versatility they have in their squads. I mean, the same with Germany. I mean, they're awesome. There are more possibilities than Joachim Löw as the national coach is actually exploiting. But it seems like now it's almost too late. I mean, now you're going into the knockout stage, and like the hesitation and even the fear even grows in knockout matches, because then you are really fearing that like one mistake and you are out, and you don't want to commit anything crucial as a coach. And so I think that's a more broader point. And I watch a couple of matches where I'm really curious about why are the coach not doing anything, why is not adjusting, why is he not reacting, personnel wise or tactic wise. And it's kind of, it's disappointing, but it's to be expected. It was the same 2016, 2018. There were two tournaments I remember vividly. It's it's nothing new. And it's nothing new in national team and international football in general. I mean, you see some of these aspects also in qualifying matches, where during an international break, during the 3-match stretch, you don't really see that much changes unless your nation is getting beaten 5-0 or something. Maybe then you see changes. But otherwise, if there are close matchups and close results, you don't really see much changes. And it's kind of disappointing, but it is what it is. So Abel, we got a couple of questions on Twitter. Is there anything else we should discuss? Because we asked you guys, the listeners on Twitter, to send in questions, and I don't know if there's something else we should discuss. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
Just wanted to kind of add my sense to the weaknesses, and like the same thing, but it's more in terms of being able to counter press. Like that comes down to the structure. Like in German you call it Restverteidigung, right? The rest defense, which is how is the players who are not really involved in the attack, how are they set up? And I felt like that was a big thing with Germany, with like I felt Kroos wasn't really in the right positions because he was pulled out, and he couldn't defend the defensive midfield, the 6th spot. I felt like, kind of Denmark has issues there in transition because of the way they're sometimes, and that's sometimes an issue with the way you are set up with the back three, and you'll have, one sort of playmaker who maybe isn't as good enough defensively, or you just have to cover a lot of ground, or maybe you have to cover for the wing backs, and I feel like that's where there's a lot of teams that maybe just play like a simple system like Deschamps, and then you just have Kante who just covers up, or obviously it's easy if you have Kante, but I felt like that was a thing, and maybe that will improve, but that was something. And one other thing I noticed, which was the lack of the set piece goals. Like you remember as the World Cup 2018 was this huge, it was maybe like, depending on whether you counted penalties or not, it was like maybe 51%. And now I think there's only like 10%. I wanted to try to find the exact number for this, but now it was
it's
now
more
it was
own goals now.
It's I think it was like 9 goals from set pieces at one point that I see now, and own goals is the tournament leader with and I was wondering, like, do you guys feel like there's anything to it, or is it just random? Because, like, logically, it would make sense that, okay, the players are tired, the pace is slower, there's not a lot of adjustments, there's a lot of individual stuff. You would think that would be conducive to have more set pieces, but it doesn't seem like it's happening.
No, I don't think, doesn't seem like teams prepare as meticulously for them anymore for some reason, or it might also be that it hasn't presented itself as a great opportunity as of yet. And I think that set pieces and set piece goals, they become more the norm once you head into the knockout stages, because then you sort of realize that those are key moments in games. I mean, a corner kick, a free kick can determine a game, because I think that most of these teams that are remaining now are able to close out a game defensively. They're able to. I'm not saying that they can do it at every single time, but they have that ability, which means that a set piece will become so important. That's why, for example, I alluded to it earlier. I will not be surprised if you see a set piece goal win the game between Czech Republic and the Netherlands, for example, because I think that it might be that the Czech Republic score from a header. I mean, they have Souček, basically the Czech Republic's answer to Marouane Fellaini. So they could basically win a game by doing that, and obviously understand the ramifications of getting a set piece goal. Also, for England's sake, England, who actually did have a lot of set piece goals in that 2018, they haven't had Harry Maguire, and something like that could be as easy as that. I mean, that was a key element to their attacking game.
2 or 3 times, right? Like I remember the John Stones one, where sometimes it's just that where you get a great set piece, and I think like Hungary had those as well, where there was a lot of good chances. I think even France as well. So I felt like there was an inordinate amount of just set piece chances that ended up getting a great save or hitting the post. It could just
I would also be very interested into knowing how many of those set piece goals from 2018 was from South American teams. For example, the likes of Brazil and Uruguay are famed for being famous, or I mean, they're extremely good at utilizing set pieces. They've always been that, at least since the 90s, when Brazil sort of remodeled their way of looking at football from being the Samba nation to being a very rigorous and physical team. That sort of, which has been their mantra, actually up until this point, I suppose. And Uruguay, I mean, when you have Jimenez and Godin, who obviously are always going to throw themselves in there, you kind of base a lot of your attacking prowess on knowing that if we get a set piece, we actually do have the ability to score here. And I think that perhaps as of right now, you haven't seen teams utilize that to the same degree. And I think also, just to round off my point, I think that France, who are a physically very good side, they actually do lack some of the really, really good aerial dual players. I mean, it had Samuel Umtiti, who was, I believe, scored 1 or 2 goals from set pieces at the 2018 World Cup. So, I mean, those types of players are seemingly, where at least they haven't shown themselves as of right now in the tournament. But I think that once we head out into the knockout stages, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of games being determined by a set piece.
All right, Abel, are there any other questions we should answer?
We just had a few about Germany, and then some stuff about Hungary. Obviously, overrepresentation of Hungarian followers as expected, but it's mostly,
what can you do, right?
Yeah, I guess the interesting one is from Ronan Murphy, which is can England 1-0 their way to the final? Is Southgate's attempt at pulling a Portugal 2016 France 2018 the best way to use the players at his disposal? I thought that was a good question. We talked a little bit about England, but I thought that's worth it, because I think the England-Germany game probably is the one that, and we can maybe combine those questions about Germany as well, because that's probably the one that everybody talks about as randomly put on a Tuesday, like 6 o'clock, which is okay. But
well, what can you do? I mean, the schedule was made months ago.
But so what do you feel about that? Do England have that sort of run in them, Jonas, or what do you feel about maybe Germany?
I remember. Was it 2014? I believe. Anyways, there was a term coined in Spain, un zeroismo, which basically means 1-0ism, which was a term coined by Atletico Madrid, who obviously kept winning 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0 all the way into winning the championship. And I cannot really see, there's no similarities for me between Gareth Southgate and Diego Simeone. So it's kind of interesting if he's going to try and adopt that sort of way of doing it. But then again, I think that going for that, especially with England, who I don't necessarily see as being, it's so difficult to say, because I think that they have the ability to be an extremely tight and well-organized defense, but I cannot see as they progress through the tournament that defensive solidity is going to be what they base their victories on. I think that they need to find out that attack. They need to find out how to get more. I'm shocked, and I know especially Constantine is shocked by this, that Jadon Sancho is not playing more, and that they're not able to get more out of a player like that. It's crazy. I mean, fine. He's not been playing because he's been doing his, I suppose, 72-hour medical with Manchester United. But anyways, they still have to be able to get more out of the players that they have. And defensively, I don't think that is going to base them all the way into winning a tournament. I think that they need to get more out of the attacking players.
I think he's been reading Constantine's tweets and stories about himself, and that's been taking his focus away from that. That's why Southgate is. I mean, I can break that news to you guys on the podcast. That's why really Southgate is ignoring Sancho. It's pretty much.
I knew it. I knew it. But that's the interesting conundrum when it comes to England. You think like about all the attacking talent they have. And then the kind of not defensive approach, but the stability-focused approach, I would call it. Also with Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips in the middle, where you got two center midfielders. Especially with Calvin Phillips, he could be a more attacking midfielder, kind of what he does for Leeds United. But he's apart from some phases in the first game against Croatia, he's more used as stabilizing center holding midfielder type of guy. Declan Rice is just a typical holding midfielder, holding in the kind of in the true sense that he's holding onto the ball and keeping things in balance and, not committing any mistakes, covering space. So you got these two, and then you got two fullbacks usually. I mean, Southgate has tried out a couple of fullbacks now. On the right side especially, you got Walker, Trippier, James, he tested all of them in each match, a different one. And Luke Shaw on the left side in 2 matches after Trippier was dropped. So they are also, sometimes they make forward progress, they advance, but sometimes they are staying more behind, they are more restrained. So it's really interesting to see that you got the typical national team approach you saw from France, for instance, in the 2018 tournament, now from England. I don't know if the attacking talent is comparable to France, but you have a couple of big names up there. You got Grealish, of course, Foden and so on, and Jadon Sancho is, of course, one of maybe the most prominent name next to Harry Kane. So it's interesting to see, and I don't know if they can 1-0 their way to the end of the tournament and to the trophy. Basically, I think it would be interesting because the fans would still be happy in England, of course, but they wanted to have a more exciting tournament. So there's kind of, I think a lot of fans are torn now. Of course, they want to win the trophy, but they want it in a more exciting way, especially that most of that all the matches for England will be played in London at Wembley, and in front of 45,000, 60,000 fans. So there's also another aspect to the whole kind of thing. I think we should wrap it up at this point. And I don't know. Has any one of you guys one like hot take or weird projection or something you want to share right now with us? Is there anything, maybe a hot take that will haunt you in a few weeks, but it's still fun to talk about?
I'll go with mine. I say that the Czech Republic will eliminate Holland.
Ooh. That I don't know if I can get any hotter than that. I feel
now watch as Holland win 5-0 against the Czech Republic. But yeah, I have a feeling that there's one thing that I think is very underrated with this Czech Republic side, and that is their willingness to fight. They're willing to get physical. They're willing to get into your face. They're willing to do the dirty work, to put you off your paces. And I think that's something that, yes, it's part of the dark arts of football, but at the same time, it's something that, especially in tournaments, will win you matches. They might not win you every match, but they'll win you a sufficient amount of matches at times. And there's something to be said about this Czech Republic side that they've grown into this tournament. I mean, they've finally found a striker that scores goals. I mean, Patrik Schick has been fantastic, and it's the successful Patrik Schick, not the Roma Patrik Schick that's met up. It's the actual good version that's at this tournament. So they have that. I think that they have a lot of interesting pieces in their team, and they also have a ruggedness about them. They're willing to fight, and they're willing to take teams off their balance. And I think that the Netherlands side are fragile. I think that they are fragile. I think that if they are challenged in the physical aspect, I think that they might crumble, and I think that they'll lose to the Czech Republic.
Abel, any hot takes?
I really can't get any hotter than that.
I mean, you're a known hot taker, so
of course that's kind of my corner for the in the football world is Mr. Hot Takes himself. Like I don't know. I mean, I think that's a really good one. I don't know if I necessarily agree, but I do share the struggles that the perceived struggles of Netherlands in terms of transition, and I think they're one of those teams that I feel like people kind of fall in love with easily because Frankie de Jong is playing like this, but it's not necessarily how he always plays, or it could just be that they were in a group that was maybe not the toughest. So yeah, I don't know. I was trying to look for something, but I really don't really see that. Maybe something with Sweden, going far. I think
we don't need that. We don't need that. Let Sweden get eliminated there.
Yeah, I mean, I think what will be interesting is the maybe the Golden Boot winning thing, because that's one of the things where I feel like all the bigger names that you would have thought of, like whether it's like Harry Kane, or I guess Benzema scored a couple now, but penalties, or even Ronaldo scoring penalties, but Mbappe has been basically missing it. So I don't know. Like I guess like Gini Wijnaldum is leading the joint lead, but I'm trying to think like who could. I mean, maybe I'll say this. I'll go with Kai Havertz to win the Golden Boot, and that'll be just because I think like Germany might get farther. So I'll go with that. And now, of course, now they're going to get eliminated by England. So
I guess so. But that's an interesting projection. I would say mine is that I say one of these days, maybe during this tournament, Bruno Fernandes and Cristiano Ronaldo will get into a fist fight over who takes the next penalty. But I'm not sure, but I guess one of these days it will happen.
Is that a hot take?
I mean, it will be a hot fight, right? One guy is going down there. One guy is going down, and I think I'm envisioning Fernando Santos, running on the field trying to get them apart. But at 66 years old, I don't know if he's really capable of doing that. Especially he has a very passive coaching style. All of a sudden he has to run on the pitch. I don't know.
Renato Sanchez has to do that job as well.
I mean, he does most of the things now.
Pretty much does everything else. So it's like, why not?
Just another thing he has to do. You're multitasking now. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, on a more lighter note, after we also discussed some of the more serious things at this tournament, I think it's time to wrap it up. Jonas, of course, we were delighted that you joined us this time for our show. Thanks for being part of it, and thanks for sharing your thoughts on the tournament.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, and I'll be back whenever you guys would like to have me back.
Usually now I'm saying the Twitter handle of our guests, but I'm not sure about how your Twitter handle is pronounced. So you are at...
Yeah, I'm at Che Guevara, which is CheGiaevara.
Well, you will at least get 2 or more followers from that, because it's not made for audio. But yeah, well, you probably knew that when you chose the Twitter handle.
I probably don't need any more followers, anyways. To be quite honest with you, I'm pretty.
You are fed up with your followers?
No, it's just no, I'm not fed up with any. I love every single follower that I have. I just am still wrapping my head around why and how I got so many of them. That's.
There are some people who think you will start a riot or a revolution in Norway at some point.
Good point.
Like that, yeah.
All right. If there's a socialist revolution up there in Norway, we know who they should arrest. Abel is at BundesPL on Twitter. I am CC_Eckner on Twitter. And if you want to support us, please visit patreon.com/thefootballpod. And for now, we are out.